Deri's story is almost too sad and horrific to be true. She was a real person, born to a well-heeled farming family, and in her teen years, dated a boy from a neighboring farm. His family disapproved of the pairing, so the boy's mother threatened to curse Rhoda with witchcraft if she pursued her son. The threat was traumatic enough that it precipitated a mental breakdown, and she became convinced that she was being tormented by a spirit named Old Scratch. She ended up at the Adams County Poorhouse, a terrible place where she stayed for 40 years. At first, she lived in a straw-lined basket and received little care from personnel. She would sit with her knees clutched to her body for so long that she lost the ability to move her legs. She was later moved into a wooden box that she shared with nesting vermin. She scratched her own eyes until she blinded herself and punched her own teeth out of her mouth. She eventually stopped speaking. This photo, taken by Neil Ulovich in 1976, shows a member of a Thai political faction striking at the lifeless body of a hanged student outside Thammasat University in Bangkok. The picture won the Pulitzer Prize in 1977. The Thammasat University massacre took place on October 6, 1976. It was a very violent attack on students and protesters who were demonstrating against Field Marshal Thanom Khattikachorn, a former military ruler. FMT Khattikachorn was planning to come back to Thailand. The return of the military dictator from exile provoked very violent protests. Protesters and students were beaten, mutilated, shot, hung, and burnt to death. In 2004, graphic pictures of prisoners being abused by U.S. military personnel in Iraq's Abu Ghraib prison were given to journalist Seymour Hersh and the CBS News TV show 60 Minutes 2, and then made public. Amongst photographs of prisoners of war being tortured in compromising positions, one shows naked Iraqi detainees piled on top of each other, with U.S. security personnel showing thumbs-up signs in the background. They even went so far as to take a photo next to a dead prisoner while smiling. One of the most sickening snaps depicts a hooded prisoner standing on a box with wires attached to his hands. He was wrongly given to believe that if he fell off the box, he would be electrocuted. And also the most disturbing one is the image that showed a detainee being led on a dog leash. Others handed to military investigators showed naked Iraqis forced to simulate sex acts, a detainee with wires attached to his genitals, and a prisoner attacked by a dog. 11 low-ranking soldiers of the 372nd Military Police Company were convicted in military trials of crimes related to the humiliation and abuse of the prisoners. Notably, Private Lindy England and Specialist Charles Grainer Jr., soldiers who were in the leaked photos, were sentenced to 3 and 10 years in prison with a demotion. In this iconic World War II photograph known as The Last Jew of Vinnytsia, a member of Einsatzgruppe D, a Nazi paramilitary group, is about to shoot a Jewish man kneeling before a filled mass grave in Vinnytsia, Ukraine in 1942. All 28,000 Jews from Vinnytsia and its surrounding areas were massacred by German forces. In just 100 days in 1994, some 800,000 people were slaughtered in Rwanda by ethnic Hutu extremists. They were targeting members of the minority Tutsi community, as well as their political opponents, irrespective of their ethnic origin. This particular photo shows the bloody feet of Tutsi's children attempting to escape slaughter by climbing the walls. A Soviet spy laughs at his executioner in a picture taken in Rukhajarvi in East Karelia in November 1942. It has been thought within the Finnish Defense Forces that the decision to withhold pictures of the fate of Russian POWs and spies may also have been prompted by concerns that pro-Soviet elements in Finnish society could have used the images for propaganda purposes. This picture was declassified by the Ministry of Defense of Finland in 2006 with the description, "Unknown Soviet intelligence officer before being shot, Finland, 1942. This iconic photo, for which Associated Press photographer Eddie Adams won a Pulitzer Prize in 1969, captures Vietnamese General Nguyen Ngoc Loan summarily executing alleged Viet Cong captain Nguyen Van Lem during the Tet Offensive in Saigon, Vietnam. Nguyen Van Lem, or Captain Bay Lop as some called him, was suspected of having killed a senior officer of the Republic of Vietnam National Police, which was commanded by Brigadier General Nguyen Ngoc Loan. Captured on NBC TV cameras and by AP photographer Eddie Adams, the picture and film footage flashed around the world and quickly became a symbol of the Vietnam War's brutality. Eddie Adams's picture was especially striking, as the moment frozen is one almost at the instant of death. Taken in a split second after the trigger was pulled, Lem's final expression is one of pain as the bullet rips through his head. In March 1993, photographer Kevin Carter made a trip to southern Sudan, where he took now iconic photo of a vulture preying upon an emaciated Sudanese toddler near the village of Ayad. The photograph was sold to the New York Times, where it appeared for the first time on March 26, 1993, as Metaphor for Africa's Despair. Journalists in the Sudan were told not to touch the famine victims because of the risk of transmitting disease, but Carter came under criticism for not helping the girl. Carter eventually won the Pulitzer Prize for this photo, but he couldn't enjoy it. "I'm really sorry I didn't pick the child up," he confided in a friend. Consumed with the violence he'd witnessed and haunted by the questions as to the little girl's fate, he committed suicide 3 months later. This heart-wrenching photo was taken by Joe O'Donnell. He was sent by the U.S. military to document the horrors inflicted upon the Japanese by air raids and atomic bombs in 1945. Over the next 7 months, starting September 1945, he traveled across Western Japan chronicling the devastation. Images of the human suffering was etched both on his negatives and his heart. In the photo, the boy stands erect, having done his duty by bringing his dead brother to a cremation ground. Standing at attention was an obvious military influence. Looking at the boy who carries his younger sibling on his back, keeps a stiff upper lip, tries so hard to be brave, is heartbreaking. The older boy stayed and watched his brother burn, yet refused to cry. This picture is widely considered the photo that changed the face of AIDS. In November 1990, Life magazine published a photograph of a young man named David Kirby, his body wasted by AIDS, his gaze locked on something beyond this world, surrounded by anguished family members as he took his last breaths. The haunting image of Kirby on his deathbed, taken by a journalism student named Therese Frere, quickly became the one photograph most powerfully identified with the HIV/AIDS epidemic that, by then, had seen millions of people infected around the globe. David Kirby died in April 1990, only 32 years old, 7 months before the photo was published. By some estimates, as many as 1 billion people have seen the now iconic Frere photograph that appeared in Life, as it was reproduced in hundreds of newspapers, magazines, and TV stories all over the world, focusing on the photo itself and on the controversies that surrounded it.